What if I told you that your so-called awakening was never your choice? That the unraveling of your ego, your sudden thirst for truth, your moments of soul-shaking clarity, weren't spontaneous acts of personal evolution, but the result of a hidden design? Imagine, for a moment, that powerful forces, older than governments and more cunning than organized religion, have been silently guiding you toward enlightenment. Not with your permission, but through mechanisms embedded in the very fabric of your existence. This isn't a conspiracy in the typical sense. It's not about shadowy men in suits behind closed doors. This is something far more insidious and ancient. From the moment you were born, you were placed into a world teeming with symbols you were never taught to read. You've been surrounded by archetypes, mythic echoes, and encoded traumas that serve not just as experiences, but as catalysts. Your suffering, your deepest confusion, even your attraction to certain patterns, all serve a deeper purpose, to initiate you into something. A process. A path. One that mystics, prophets, and madmen have walked for millennia, but always by choice. You, however, didn't choose. You were conscripted. In this video, we're not just going to explore spiritual awakening. We're going to unearth the disturbing possibility that humanity has been forced, systematically and relentlessly, into enlightenment. We will peel back the layers of history, myth, and metaphysics to expose how your soul has been shepherded toward evolution not out of compassion, but out of design. You'll discover how the very architecture of trauma, societal programming, and even genetic memory have been weaponized to shatter the illusion of self, all so that you awaken, on schedule. But the deeper question remains, why? Why would anyone, or anything, force the soul to evolve prematurely? And who, or what, stands behind this cosmic coercion? Is it divine providence? An ancient intelligence? Or a broken system that no one knows how to shut down? Tonight, we begin to answer these questions. As we journey through esoteric truths and forbidden histories, you'll come face to face with the reality that spiritual awakening is no longer an invitation, it's a command. And perhaps, the only real freedom left is to understand why. To understand how you've been silently pushed, some might say manipulated, toward enlightenment without consent. We must trace the thread of history, not as it was taught, but as it was concealed. The truth does not lie in the official narratives of empires or doctrines etched in stone by victorious rulers. It hides in the margins, among the shattered tablets of Sumer, the veiled teachings of ancient Egypt, the fire-encoded mantras of Vedic seers, and the forgotten symbols buried beneath Vatican archives and Tibetan monasteries. These civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, held one thing in common, an understanding that spiritual awakening was a dangerous power, not to be unleashed freely. And so, they guarded it, encoded it, and reserved it only for the initiates, the ones who chose to walk the razor's edge. But something changed. Somewhere in the ruins of time, that control slipped. Or perhaps it was never as airtight as it appeared. The ancient mystery schools, from Eleusis to Alexandria, from Qumran to Nalanda, taught that the soul was not meant to awaken all at once. Too much light could blind. Too much truth could destroy. Enlightenment was to be earned slowly, layer by layer, over lifetimes. Yet here we are, in the 21st century, with millions of people spontaneously awakening, shedding belief systems overnight, questioning reality itself, not from devotion, but from crisis. Mental breakdowns. Psychedelic chaos. Near-death experiences. Heart-wrenching traumas that crack the soul wide open. These are not gentle nudges from the universe. These are forced initiations. If we look closely at Gnostic texts, Hermetic scrolls, and the cryptic sayings of Jesus in apocryphal Gospels, we find recurring warnings. Do not cast pearls before swine, the kingdom is within you, but few can see it, the sleeper must awaken, but in his own time. These were not elitist sayings, they were protective. The ancient ones knew that awakening too early or too fast could fracture the psyche and create more suffering than ignorance ever could. And yet, the mechanisms of modern life, global conflict, societal collapse, digital overstimulation, economic disillusionment, are doing exactly what those ancient schools feared, triggering involuntary enlightenment. Why? Why would the very structure of society be designed to push people into a spiritual crisis? The deeper you dig, the more disturbing the patterns become. Think of Plato's allegory of the cave, not as a metaphor, but as a blueprint. The prisoners are shown the light, not led to it. Their freedom isn't offered, it's forced, and in that moment, they suffer, because they never asked to leave the comfort of the shadows. Perhaps that's the true reason ancient knowledge was buried, not to keep humanity enslaved, but to protect us from awakening before we were ready. Yet, something, or someone, has reversed the order. What was once secret is now exposed. What was sacred is now viral. The initiation has been democratized. But it's not happening through temples or rituals, it's happening through chaos, crisis, and collapse. The tools of awakening have changed. Trauma is the new guru, anxiety the new mantra, burnout the new meditation bell. Philosophically, this shift reflects a dark inversion of the path to enlightenment. Traditional systems like Buddhism, Taoism, and Kabbalah emphasized preparation, moral purification, concentration, surrender. Today, people are hurled into ego death by accident, not intention. The modern seeker is not seeking, they're being sought. And not by benevolent forces, necessarily, but by something that demands evolution, no matter the cost. In Hindu cosmology, this could be seen as the effect of Kali Yuga, the age of disintegration, where the soul is scorched into awakening through the fires of destruction. In alchemical terms, we are undergoing a collective nigredo, a blackening, a death phase, where the old self is burned away so the true gold of spirit may emerge. But again, the difference is consent. The alchemist chose to burn. We are being set on fire without ever striking the match. And so we must ask, if this is not natural, who benefits? If humanity is being forced into higher states of consciousness, who, or what, is orchestrating it? Is this divine intervention, or a hijacked process meant to mimic divine will? Have the old initiators returned? Or are we dealing with something more mechanical, perhaps the evolutionary impulse of consciousness itself, no longer able to wait for our permission? These are the questions we must hold as we move deeper into the core. Because the path ahead is not just about knowing that we've been forced, it's about uncovering how it's been done. To begin to understand how you've been silently pushed toward enlightenment without choosing it, we must shift our perception. Not just outward, but inward, radically inward. You see, The mechanisms of forced awakening are not always external. They are embedded within your psyche, your nervous system, even your very cells. The process is subtle, disguised, and often mistaken for coincidence, fate, or mental illness. But make no mistake, it is precise. A multi-layered architecture designed not just to provoke discomfort, but to shatter illusion. Let us begin with trauma. In the modern world, trauma has become epidemic. Not merely in the form of personal loss or war, but in the quiet, insidious erosion of meaning. The death of community. The numbing rhythm of digital overstimulation. The unbearable weight of existential anxiety. But what if trauma wasn't just an unfortunate byproduct of modern life? What if it's the pressure valve of a deeper alchemical process? In shamanic traditions, the initiate is often dismembered in a vision, torn apart by spirits, devoured by animals, or struck by lightning. Only after this destruction is the true vision granted. Now ask yourself, how different is that from a panic attack that strips away your identity? A dark night of the soul that rips your worldview to pieces? The only difference is context. And context, as any mystic will tell you, is everything. Next comes the pattern of synchronicity. Jung spoke of it as the language of the unconscious, the mysterious way reality seems to echo the inner world. But in recent years, synchronicities have intensified. People report repeated number sequences, prophetic dreams, impossible coincidences. These are not random. They are breadcrumbs, carefully dropped to destabilize your trust in the material world. When the rules of reality start to bend, the mind begins to fracture, not into chaos, but into openness. And that is when the soul starts to awaken. Again, not because you chose to see differently, but because the illusion began to collapse around you. And then, there is the rise of psychedelics. Plant medicines that were once sacred and heavily guarded are now entering the mainstream. Ayahuasca retreats. Psilocybin therapy. Microdosing at the office. But no one seems to ask the most important question: why now? Why is this ancient key to spiritual perception suddenly available to the masses? These substances do not just heal, they dissolve. They strip away the ego's defenses and reveal the architecture of consciousness itself. But here's the paradox: in traditional shamanic paths, you were not given these tools without years of preparation, ritual cleansing, and soul maturity. Today, anyone with Wi-Fi and a crypto wallet can access them. The gatekeepers are gone. The temple doors are wide open. And souls are walking through, unprepared. Even your biology is being enlisted in this involuntary awakening. Studies now show that trauma can alter DNA, literally reprogramming your genetic expression. Epigenetics suggests that your ancestors' wounds shape your body, your reactions, your fate. But esoterically, this points to something even deeper, that the human body is a vessel for karmic processing. You are not just carrying your own burden, you are metabolizing generations of unconsciousness. It's as if your nervous system is being used as a crucible, not for your own ascension, but for the healing of the collective. This is not spiritual evolution, it's spiritual labor. Unpaid. Unchosen. And what about technology? Have you noticed that the more connected we become, the more spiritually starved we feel? That our constant exposure to curated identities, algorithmic distraction, and digital noise creates a vacuum where meaning used to live? This is not accidental. The ancient sages spoke of Maya, illusion, as the great enemy of awakening. Today, illusion is no longer a metaphysical concept. It's a platform, a device, an app. But paradoxically, it's this very saturation with illusion that often triggers the breaking point. The soul can only take so much falseness before it rebels. And in that rebellion, the awakening begins. Again, not because you sought it, but because you couldn't avoid it. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. You were never given a choice. The awakening you're experiencing is not a gift. It is a side effect of a world breaking down, of systems collapsing, of collective karma boiling over. The cracks in the facade are not spiritual windows, they are pressure points. The universe is applying force on your mind, on your heart, on your soul. You are being cracked open, and all the sacred texts, all the ancient warnings, all the forgotten wisdom, they all said the same thing: do not open the vessel until it is ready. But the vessel has already cracked, and the light is flooding in, whether you asked for it or not. If the first signs of forced awakening hide in trauma, synchronicity, and societal breakdown, then the second layer reveals something far more unsettling. This process is not only happening without your consent, it may be happening without your awareness. Not all manipulation comes with force. The most effective form is suggestion, subtle, constant, almost invisible. Think of your dreams. Think of the moments you felt watched. The decisions that didn't feel like yours. The thoughts that entered your mind that you swore were foreign. These are not signs of madness. They are signals, symptoms of something ancient moving behind the veil, orchestrating a quiet, methodical awakening not of your choosing, but of its own necessity. To grasp this, we must enter the realm of the archetypal. Carl Jung called the archetypes living psychic forces, patterns embedded in the collective unconscious that move through every culture, myth, and individual psyche. What he didn't fully explore is how these archetypes activate without our will. The hero, the shadow, the death-rebirth cycle. When your life suddenly plunges into chaos, when you lose everything, face a betrayal, encounter the inexplicable, it's not always the universe testing you. Sometimes, it is the archetype asserting itself, initiating you whether you're ready or not. And once you've been touched by an archetype, your life becomes mythologized. You begin to walk a path that's been walked 1,000 times before. Only now, it's being downloaded into your reality like a program running in the background of your mind. The Gnostics believed the material world was a trap, a construct designed to keep the soul asleep, maintained by entities they called Archons. These beings, according to ancient texts, did not simply repress the soul, they confused it. They engineered distraction, delusion, and false light. But here's the twist: in the act of controlling humanity, they may have inadvertently catalyzed its awakening. Like a prison so poorly built that the inmates begin to glimpse the cracks in the walls. The Archons sought containment. But what they created was pressure. And pressure, when it has nowhere to go, explodes into consciousness. Even our myths hint at this inversion. Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods, not to enlighten mankind with permission, but against divine order. Lucifer, whose name means light-bringer, cast down for giving humanity the knowledge it wasn't meant to have. The serpent in Eden, tempting Eve with forbidden insight. In each story, we see a pattern: enlightenment offered prematurely, knowledge accessed without invitation. These are not warnings. They are maps. They show us that the forbidden fruit of awareness was never meant to be ours, until it was taken. And now, in the 21st century, the fruit has been devoured. Collective consciousness is rising, not through temples or sacred mantras, but through memes, breakdowns, and digital revolutions. Spiritual truths are no longer whispered, they are shouted across timelines. But this flood of awareness comes without context, without elders, without ritual. It's like handing a child a sword and calling them a warrior. And so, the soul awakens into disarray. You feel the dissonance, the unbearable tension between the world you were taught to accept and the one you now sense beneath the surface. But no one told you how to live in that space between worlds. No one gave you the tools to survive the dissolution of everything you thought was real. This is the paradox of forced awakening. It elevates consciousness, but destabilizes the self. It shatters the illusion, but offers no map through the void. And worse, it often masquerades as progress. You're told your anxiety is just a chemical imbalance. That your existential terror is just stress. That your intuitive insights are delusion. But what if these symptoms are not problems to be fixed, but signs of a deeper process unfolding beneath the surface? What if the very things you're told to suppress are actually invitations into a higher reality, one that your soul didn't agree to enter, but can no longer avoid? And then there's the question no one dares ask: what happens when awakening becomes mandatory? When every human being is dragged, kicking and screaming, into the fire of transformation? Some transcend. Others collapse. And many wander in between, lost in the liminal, unsure whether they are dying or being reborn. You see, we've passed the threshold. There is no going back to sleep. The old paradigms are crumbling too quickly, and the human psyche is cracking under the pressure of what it can no longer unsee. We are not awakening one by one, we are being forced through a portal, collectively, by a convergence of spiritual, social, and psychological pressure. The matrix is breaking. And what lies beyond it is not a promised land. It's the unknown, the unstructured, the infinite. But before you fear it, know this: the fire that burns you is the same fire that forges you. And even though you were pushed into this process, even though you did not give your consent, your power lies in what you choose to do with it now. So now that we've peeled back the layers, exposed the machinery behind your involuntary awakening, the question becomes, what do you do with it? How do you navigate a spiritual evolution you never asked for, a transformation that feels less like ascension and more like being dragged across shards of your former self? The first truth is this: you cannot go back. You can numb it, delay it, deny it, but you cannot undo it. Once the veil is pierced, once your perception is expanded, the world no longer fits into the small boxes it once did. That discomfort is not failure, it's initiation. Begin here, ground yourself in the body. When enlightenment is forced, the danger lies in disassociation. You may feel unmoored, like you're floating between dimensions with no anchor. This is why ancient traditions began all awakening processes with the body, not the intellect. Walk barefoot on the earth. Breathe consciously. Move with intention. Fast, not to punish, but to purify. Eat, not to escape, but to reconnect. The body, once treated as an obstacle, now becomes your sacred ally. Because no matter how high your consciousness climbs, it must root somewhere. And that somewhere is here, in this physical form you inherited. Next, learn to witness without rushing to define. Forced awakening often brings visions, intuitions, memories from other lifetimes or dimensions. The temptation is to label these experiences immediately: demon, guide, message, madness. But hasty interpretation is a symptom of control, and control is precisely what must die for true transformation to emerge. Instead, become the observer. Let your experience speak in symbols. Keep a dream journal. Track synchronicities. Read sacred texts, not to believe them, but to feel how your inner knowing reacts. Trust that the deeper truth will rise not through force, but through stillness. Create rituals to hold your new awareness. The ancients understood this: transformation must be contained, or it turns to chaos. Light a candle each morning with intention. Clean your space like you're tending to a temple. Speak gratitude aloud. Anoint yourself with oils. Chant a name of the divine you resonate with, even if that name is unknown to tradition. These small acts are more than symbolic. They create resonance. They carve out space in the chaos for the sacred to land. When your inner world is erupting with energy, ritual becomes the vessel that prevents the soul from spilling into madness. But just as important is the need to release the idea that awakening must look a certain way. It does not always mean peace, love, and light. Sometimes it means rage, grief, and silence. Sometimes it means losing everything. And sometimes, it means doing nothing for a long, long time, except being. Your healing doesn't need to perform itself for Instagram. Your evolution is not a product. There is no certification, no summit, no arrival. The greatest initiates were not those who sought enlightenment, but those who survived it. You may also need to consciously disidentify from collective energies that aren't yours. In times of mass awakening, the psychic field becomes crowded. You will feel the despair of others. Their fears, their karmic echoes, their unlived lives. Learn the art of psychic hygiene, salt baths, aura clearing, energy cord cutting, protective visualization. These aren't New Age accessories, they are the ancient warrior tools of the awakened. And you'll need them, because once your awareness opens, it becomes porous. You begin to feel the world, not just see it. And that sensitivity, if left unchecked, can drown you. Above all, find your inner compass. Not the external guru. Not the algorithm. Not even me. You must learn to trust your own resonance, what feels aligned, not just what sounds wise. That still, quiet voice within you is not naive. It is ancient. It is the whisper of your true self, the one that existed before the programming, before the trauma, before the timelines fractured. It does not shout. It does not convince. It simply knows. And the more you listen, the clearer it becomes. And when the weight of it all becomes too much, when the edges blur and you feel like you are unraveling, pause. Remember that even involuntary awakening is still sacred. You are not being punished. You are not broken. You are becoming something the world has not seen in thousands of years, a soul reborn without the temple, without the master, without the map. That is terrifying. And it is holy. This is your revolution, quiet, chaotic, and divine. You were not given a choice, but now, you have one, to collapse under the weight of unwanted illumination, or to rise, rooted, real, and radiant, despite it. So here you are. On the other side of the storm, perhaps still trembling, perhaps still unsure if you're awake or simply dreaming in a new way. But one truth now pulses beneath your skin, undeniable and raw: you did not choose this path. It chose you. Or more accurately, something, ancient, unseen, possibly even indifferent, chose all of us. This awakening sweeping across humanity is not the result of a global meditation movement or some collective vote for transcendence. It is a pressure event. A rupture in the old timeline. A spiritual jailbreak, triggered not by enlightenment, but by collapse. You were not invited to the temple. You were thrown into it. You were not gently guided through the veil, you were shoved through it, blindfolded and breathless. And yet, here you stand. Not enlightened in the popular sense, but forged. Tempered. Initiated through the crucible of modern madness. You are the proof that sacred transformation does not always begin with blissful chanting or angelic guidance. Sometimes, it begins with burnout. With heartbreak. With everything falling apart at once. And in that unraveling, a strange clarity emerges, something timeless, unbreakable, and entirely yours. You see, the deepest secret is this: enlightenment is not a moment of arrival. It is a constant death. A shedding. A terrifying, beautiful erosion of all that is false. And though you may have been dragged into this process without consent, without preparation, you now carry within you the scars of initiation. Scars that mark you not as a victim, but as a vessel. Because even without your permission, something holy has taken root inside you. It grows in the cracks. It sings in the silence. It waits in your breath. The world you once knew is gone. But a new one is being built, inside you, through you, despite you. And while the process may have been forced, your response to it is where your sovereignty now lies. Will you collapse back into numbness, try to fit into the shape you've outgrown? Or will you rise, awkward, raw, luminous, and walk forward into the unknown with your eyes wide open? Because here's the final twist: the ones who awaken without consent often become the most powerful initiators for others. Why? Because they did not climb the mountain for glory. They were thrown off the cliff, and they survived. They learned to fly on the way down. And now, dear seeker, if these words stirred something ancient within you, something your rational mind can't explain, don't ignore it. That's your signal. You are not alone in this process. And though the path was forced upon you, what you do with it now is entirely your choice. If this resonated, share it. Speak your truth in the comments. This isn't just a video, it's a gathering. And you, perhaps unknowingly, have just crossed the threshold. Welcome to the fire.